Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Donkey Kong 94. In the last part, we reached Rocky Valley, the second to last world in the game, and now it's time for us to go finish the game off. Like I mentioned last time, Rocky Valley is the longest world in the game, hence why it's actively the only world split into two different videos, but also it's definitely the most complex with what they throw at you, both in terms of gauntlets and puzzle. Complexity isn't the word I actually should use here. Aggression, maybe? That sounds weird, but it feels weirdly fitting because the puzzle stages here in Rocky Valley that are more puzzly still have a lot of enemies trying to hit you from all sorts of angles during them, and I guess that could be considered puzzle aggression in a way. So I ignored the key earlier to get down here and clear the way to the door, but I believe if you're aggressive enough, it is possible to go up there, get the key, and get it down there all in one fell swoop without having to backtrack for it like I am here. But I've never played the level like that, as in my memory, either the timer was too strict in the times I've tried to do that, or I just constantly end up getting hit by the plant enemy for some reason in specific due to the timing of it all. I don't know why. Now, after this level, we're going to be at the Donkey Kong encounter at the halfway point of Rocky Valley, and it's around this point especially where this world really just starts to throw a lot at you, as the early levels still aren't that rough, but the amount of entities alone as we approach some of the later levels here can get a little ridiculous. Plus, not for nothing, this is a Donkey Kong level that can give me some shit here and again. The main thing Donkey Kong does in this fight is throw rocks. If you're directly below him and at the very start of the battle, he does throw one directly at you, so you need to be a little bit careful. We need to wait for rocks to bounce along the hallways here, though, and fall behind us, at which point they will roll towards us. Jump on top of them and you can use them as platforms, and just watch out for ones directly falling overhead at that point. You can use the handstand here to bounce them off your feet like I mentioned prior, but there's not really any reason to. Right there, though, we did see a little bit of a minor control quirk that comes only into play in a couple levels here, and that is, there's times where Mario can be a little bit sticky on ladders. If you just even remotely slightly touch downwards, you'll probably just start climbing again, and there is a climbing up and down animation when you get on and off a ladder at that point, and that can be enough to get you into some trouble here and again. Honestly, thinking about the rest of the levels in this specific world, and even the few levels that remain after that, the next set of 4 levels is what I'd argue to be my personal hardest in the game, because they just throw a lot at you very quickly. The levels that remain after that definitely still have their difficulties, but I find them easier to process personally. This level in specific, we got a bunch of these killer fish, waterfalls that we can swim in, and DK Jr. throwing mini mushrooms at us. Not for nothing, the mini mushrooms can be a little bit of a boon when you're swimming through the waterfalls, as while they shrink you down, that means you're also a harder target for the fish to hit because you swim at about the same rate no matter what. With that said, if Donkey Kong Jr. snaps you from a distance with this, like I said, you can only really swim while mini, so you have to wait for the mini mushroom to wear off after a few seconds to actively grab the key or open up this gate to start the platform so you can get back down with the key safely. You could theoretically purposefully get hit by the mini mushroom in order to actively get the 2 items on the bottom of the stage, and that will get you over to the left side of the stage pretty quickly as well. And while that ultimately is probably safer, there's something about it that always feels foreboding to me in a way of, if I go that way, I'm an easier target later. I feel like that's just a psychology thing, though, at that point. And also, not for nothing, I've died a lot to the specific plant in that stage that fires bullets from behind you while you're actively carrying the key. So this level is a giant exercise in timing. We got a blind fall here with spikes down at the bottom and a platform that we can stand on, but because of the height of the fall, if you just fall straight down, you're dead no matter what. So grab these springs and use them in precise locations to generate a safe pathway for you to get all the way down. And hey, not for nothing, it also gives you a way to save the key from the spikes in the case it's going to fall on top of those. Not that that would damage the key, but you wouldn't really have a way to grab it from there now, would you? So, the next stage. It's not the most dangerous stage in the game, but I would argue it's definitely the strictest with what it wants you to do. We gotta get the key up to that door using the 3 ladders here. With that said, because of how the timers work, you have a relatively short amount of time to get the key onto that conveyor belt, climb down a ladder, climb up another one, and then get to the key in time to save it before hitting another ladder to actively climb up to the victory door. I have had to restart this timer so many times over the years, anytime I revisit this. The only reason I had the solution offhand this time is because I did a practice run. I want to say I almost got a time over here on the practice run too, so yeah, this one can be surprisingly strict. Even just a slight variation from that can really cause things to go south really quickly. That stage has never felt comfortable. And now we're already on to our next Donkey Kong stage, and this one's going to have a lot going on in it because in this one we got barrels being rolled at us on what are already small platforms with a lot of the tiles that'll actively fall if you're on them for too long, meaning some pathways here, if you mess up a jump and have to lose some progress, you gotta go around the hard way potentially. I did that pretty cleanly there. I've died to that specific Donkey Kong fight so many times over the years, it's really not even funny. And with that, we're now onto the final chunk of Rocky Valley, and we get a new mechanic here, lava. Do not believe this cutscene. While Mario took the hit there and bounced out the fire just fine, he clearly can only do that once because any lava in the remainder of the world and the remainder of the game, really, as little as there is instant kill. It is not red water, like, say, the lava sprite was back in Mario Bros. 1 on the NES. This is death lava. So earlier in the LP, I brought up a specific thing about the killer plant enemy on screen, that they actively have a safe spot on top of them that you can stand on top of. If you don't know that about them, this stage gets much harder. Because if you know that, you can just grab this key, jaunt on up there, jump on top of it, throw the key up, do a backflip, and get up there yourself, and you're good, and you can finish the stage. If you don't know that, you're doing a very precise throw to the side as you jump over toward that ladder, and climbing the ladder before the timer for the key runs out. It's doable, but it's precise. Speaking of precise, though, time for the next level. This probably has the most individual steps of any given level in the game. It's also, I believe, the largest stage in the game in terms of pure level design. We have several levers here that you can close and open to make certain gates open and certain floors appear. What we need to do is open them in specific orders to get the states in the right place so that we can go up above us and actively interact with these giant block enemies that are at the top here. See, the thing is about these block enemies that we saw all the way back in, I think, World 1 or 2, you can stand on top of them. And they also can walk on lava. So we need to slowly maneuver them down there so we can actively use them as platforms. But be careful because while you can stand on top of them, I believe if you jump on them while they're upside down, you can kill them. But also, if they land on you while they're upside down, I think they'll kill you. So you really need to take your time and let them actively rest into their main state area down there at the bottom of the lava, because otherwise you might screw this up in one of a couple different ways. Once we get onto these block enemies, though, it's just a simple walk over to the key and onto the platform directly next to the key to get up to the top of the level, and then walk left to the end of the stage. The real trial isn't actively getting to the key, not so much taking the key to the door. And I do like how they vary up the design of the levels like that, where, again, like I think I mentioned this earlier in the LP, sometimes the challenge is getting the key to the door, sometimes it's getting to the key at all. Other times they make it so that both are a bit of a trial depending on what the actual hazard level is. And they actively do vary up how they place hazards in that regard, so it keeps being interesting, is a good way to put it. So in this level, we gotta go across the top here above some lava and use the usually instant kill blocks as platforms to get to the far right side so we can fall down once again and then right to the left to get the key. But that's something you have to keep in mind at the bottom is that there's gonna be rocks going across the lava. Similarly to the rocks going across the ice water back in the iceberg world, these rocks will slowly sink as you are on top of them. So when you're on top of them, you want to do several quick short hops to keep the rocks as high as you can so you don't touch the instant kill lava below you. Sinking into the water and losing the key isn't the issue here. It's a potential game over. Well, not game over, death. I ain't getting a game over at this point unless I massively, massively screw up for way too long. And with that, we're now on to the final level of Rocky Valley. This time around, Donkey Kong combines a couple of things we've seen. He's going to throw enemies at us rather than barrels, so they'll walk on their own accord. You need to be careful with how you throw them, because you might accidentally also take out other enemies if you're not careful. Additionally, there's a wind platforming to worry about here, but also there's the bird enemy patrolling right to left and left to right. They'll respawn at the nest at the top left if they go too far off screen, but when you walk below them, you need to be careful because after a couple seconds of you doing that, they will fire an egg from below them that acts as another hazard. Between fighting the wind as it is, tracking onto Donkey Kong can be rough here, but if you don't keep in mind where the bird's positioned, you can be in trouble really quickly. Again, that's a fight I've died to a lot over the years. And with that, we're now done with Rocky Valley. Incoming flashing lights warning as we do the world transition, as has been standard throughout the game up to this point, of course. But with that, we're also now in the final world of the game, World 9. Well, sort of. It's labeled as World 9, but it is technically the 10th world if you count the first 4 stages from the very start of the game, the first 100 meters as World 1. But I believe both numerically on the bottom of the stage selects, but also in the game's code, they count those as World 0. Welcome to World 9, The Tower. With an ominous as hell world theme. This song is good, but man is it weirdly ominous. So what's unique about the Tower world is that every single level is a Donkey Kong encounter. So you really need to be on your feet here, as they're going to throw a lot of the things we've seen DK do in the game up to this point at us, potentially at once. For instance, in this stage, we got Donkey Kong stomping down like in the first DK encounter, but now we have DK Jr. as well as an enemy potentially upsetting the pattern of things, specifically with DK Jr. randomly swapping his switch from on to off, making this specific gate above me close and open. And if you're not careful, that might go badly. With that said, at least in that case, you can do a handstand jump to just get up there pretty quickly. I won't lie, it took me several playthroughs to realize I could do that, as for some reason I figured it was actually just something I couldn't get through. The second encounter is a lot of the same. DK Jr. is going to be flipping a switch on and off that's going to open some gates, but instead of the barrels or enemies, DK is back to throwing springs at you, which he honestly does very little in the game now that I think about it. Also, I think you can fall down into the room with DK Jr. there. I believe he just kills you if you touch him. I don't really remember, though. It's been all since I last did that. That stage I've actively had some trouble in the past, but once I realized I could just wait up there until that opens to get a good jump up there, it gets much easier. Also, something that I find very distracting as a fan of a very specific Zelda game. The sounds that the springs make, if they're not the exact same soundbite, they're very similar to soundbites used by certain entities in Link's Awakening, and especially the Oracle duology, specifically a certain animal buddy you can ride in that level. So here in the third level, we're at the mercy of DK Jr. for a large chunk of this level. When he swaps his lever on and off, gates will close as is usual, but now you might be trapped in rooms with these skull enemies as they patrol around the ceilings, walls, and floor. In specific, if you're quick enough, you can get into this room pretty safely, but if you're a little slow and you're stuck in that room with the 2 patrolling skulls, you might be in trouble. Partner that with the, at times, inconsistent timing with DK's own movements of how these gates, these ladders might raise and lower. This can get a little bit weird fast. Also, watch out for the mini mushrooms, though. I don't think I've ever actively gotten hit by one of those in this level in my time playing the game. But I might just be forgetting something, honestly. With that, we're already on to the first mini-boss, I guess, more accurately in this world, rather than a DK encounter. And in a way, this level is revenge, because our goal here is to climb these ropes and get these keys up to the keyholes on the top of the level. In doing so, we'll slowly close a cage around Donkey Kong Jr. Worth noting, this is effectively them completely reversing the situation from the final level in Donkey Kong Jr. itself, where you play as DK Jr. doing this to Mario. I think that's fun as hell. Just watch out for the bird enemy, because I won't lie, that's killed me more times than I'd like to admit in this specific level, if only because I just get too carried away looking at the keys. Oh, actually, that reminds me, something I haven't brought up yet that I probably should. While Mario and Donkey Kong series, stories, and lores are pretty liquid and really depend on whatever they want to do with them that feels cool at that specific point in time, worth noting the Donkey Kong we're actively encountering in this game is the one that becomes Cranky Kong as of Donkey Kong Country. Donkey Kong Jr. in this game is the Donkey Kong that became Donkey Kong starting in Country On, because I guess Donkey Kong's more of a title than it is an actual name. There's some extra layers to that Bonanza kind of adds ever so loosely, but the point is, for some reason people got really twisted up about that. I don't really get why. Like, for me in specific with these two franchises, which even then I kind of consider one mega franchise at this point, I consider continuity more a wink and nod rather than a necessity. To me, it's a lot like how whatever happens in a comic book storyline of a major character like Batman, Spider-Man, and all that really depends on who the writer is and what they think is cool, rather than it being one ongoing narrative like, say, Trails or things like that. So worth noting, with Donkey Kong Jr. imprisoned in the cage, he is actively removed from the levels moving forward. It's just us versus Donkey Kong for the very end game. And not for nothing, this level in specific has one of the more precise moments of platforming in the game while we spin across these wires. Watch out for the electric orbs that spawn as well. It's specifically right here. But you need to wait for DK to open that gate. But if you actively spin too fast here, you'll overshoot Pauline and land on top of Donkey Kong, and he will kill you. You need to only spin like 2, maybe 3 times to get up there safely. Go too far, and well, you go too far. coming up on the second to last level, this is another straightforward climb up to the top to meet Donkey Kong. With that said, now every single platform here collapses below you after a second. So if you end up hesitating too long or taking a hit from these mini mushrooms, you're probably going to take a death just from the fact that you can't make the higher jumps anymore. With that said, if you easily avoid the mini mushrooms, you're safe. And with that, we're on to the final Donkey Kong encounter of the game. Also, not for nothing, one of the more annoying things about this game when you die in levels like this, you need to listen to the every single time you die, and that gets annoying after a while if you die a lot on the same level. Love this boss track, by the way. It only gets to play for about a minute and a half, depending on how well you play this fight, but it's really good. So, the Donkey Kong encounter at the top of the tower is pretty standard by this point. Hit him with 3 barrels and he's done. With that said, the barrels will now spawn mini mushrooms when they get destroyed, and you have to keep in mind the wind platforming as well. With that said, it's still a pretty standard Donkey Kong fight because they don't do a lot to diversify the bosses in this game. Again, I mentioned that they had other bosses planned, they just wanted to keep the focus on DK, which is a neat idea, but it definitely means that these fights get stale pretty quickly. And he's down! And out of here! Well, now we're back at the world map, so something's clearly amiss here, huh? In what is, I believe, technically the first appearance of the Mega Mushrooms, DK has gotten much larger. And if this is a taste of what the rest of the game's other planned boss fights would have been like, yeah, we really missed out. So DK in this is going to focus on using his hands to try to attack you. It's the usual head and 2 hands fight we see from Nintendo a lot. When he slams his fists on the ground, things will fall down. Sometimes it's dumbbells, sometimes it's barrels, it's kind of random, but usually at least 1 barrel falls. You can use DK's body to get up to the top platform where one will land safely, but if you miss that one does fall lower and you can kick it up with a handstand kick to actively use as projectile. 2 or 3 hits and he moves on to his next phase, and as he gets more phases, he adds more attacks. For instance, now, his hands will kind of hesitate towards the sides and then slam inwards. You can tell what attack he's going to do next depending on where his hands are when they actively leave the screen. If they slide off the side like that, they're going to do the slam. If they go down below, they're going to do the 1-2 slam like that. And there's going to be another attack added in the 3rd and final phase as well. The items that fall from the sky in this fight are never really a threat. The main way I've always died to this is the fists themselves, especially in the slam. Though not for nothing, the new attack he gets in phase 3 here is pretty rough. He's going to slam his fists down 3 times, progressing towards the opposite side of the screen where the hand spawns from. On top of that, each slam will also cause 2 projectiles to fall down, which does mean there's a lot going on in that attack. But usually he only really does it once or twice in my experience in this phase, but it really just depends on your luck, I suppose. Death can come for you very quickly in this fight, and what really sucks about dying in this fight is that you do have to start all the way over. While 9 hits isn't a lot by a lot of other game standards, it can be surprisingly tedious to die in this fight over and over again, especially if you get all the way to the 3rd phase consistently. That really should have killed me, but it didn't for some reason. I imagine the other cut fights probably would have had less HP than this, maybe like 4 to 6 on average, I would guess. But 9 definitely makes for one hell of a final encounter. that's Donkey Kong 1994. This is an adorable game. I find it really fun just to play through a couple levels at any given point in time if I really feel like in need of a quick platforming fix. And I'm really glad this did actively have mechanics that stuck around both in the 3D space with the foreshadowings of things like the backflip, side hop, and triple jump, but also in its own mechanical sense with the Mario and Donkey Kong games. In my own experience for a good while there, this was a relatively underrepresented game in the Mario and Donkey Kong lexicon, so to speak, when it came to how it feels to play, how good it feels, and all that jazz. And I am glad it really started to get more of a following as years went on, especially with Mario vs. Donkey Kong effectively being stealth sequels to it, and those got a lot more attention if memory serves when I was growing up, at least. I do kind of wish it had a few more things going on. I feel like they really could have diversified the boss fights a bit more to be a little more interesting and all that jazz, and they clearly had plans to do that, they just never implemented. But at the same time, as the game was released, it does still feel really good to go and play. And honestly, it probably is still in my top 3 Donkey Kong games to go back to today. It's this, DKC2, and Bonanza really did just enter that immediately upon the first playthrough. Out of those, it's probably going to be the ones I go back to the least, if only because it's also the longest, but damn if it wasn't fun to go through. Also because I haven't made note of it yet directly. One of the other sound upgrades you get by playing this game through a Super Game Boy rather than just on the Game Boy itself is that you actually get a Super Nintendo rendition of its credits theme, which I absolutely adore. This is so soothing to me. The Game Boy version is also pretty good, though. I'll see if I put a link to that in the description below. If you want to play this, it's on the Game Boy, of course. It was on the 3DS eShop, which, not accessible anymore. I'm not sure if it was ever on the Wii or Wii U's, but it's definitely available via the Nintendo Switch Online Game Boy Online app, should you have that subscription fee. I don't think you need the expansion pass. I think it's just with the base one, but I frankly don't do a lot with that specific subsection of the Nintendo Online stuff, so shrugs. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great night. Take care. And I'll see you guys next Let's Play, whatever that may be. See you guys then.